The Vandermeer estate's Thanksgiving dinner had been a study in calculated cruelty for the past 7 years. But this year, they went too far. I watched my daughter Maria's shoulders slump as Eleanor Vandermeer, my mother-in-law, directed her toward the kitchen with a perfectly manicured wave. "The helps table is through there, dear," Eleanor said, her voice dripping with false sweetness. "Much more appropriate for someone of your background." Maria's dark eyes, so like her great-grandmother Isabella's, met mine in a silent plea. At 8 years old, she already understood too well what it meant to be the daughter of a Mexican immigrant in the Vandermeer household, despite her father's blood running through her veins. "Mother," my husband Thomas began, but his protest withered under Eleanor's arctic stare. "Now, Thomas, we've discussed this. The main dining room is for family only, real family." She emphasized the word real while adjusting her heirloom pearl necklace, the one she'd sworn would never grace my neck. Around the massive mahogany table, the other Vandermeers tittered behind their hands. Cousin Regina's children, blonde and blue-eyed like their mother, sat proudly in their booster seats, their places set with the finest wedgwood china, the same china that had been locked away when Maria was born. "Mrs. Santiago," Eleanor addressed me by my maiden name, never my married one. "Surely you understand. Tradition is everything in this house." I touched the envelope in my blazer pocket, feeling the heavy weight of its contents. "Oh, I understand tradition very well, Eleanor, especially the traditions Johannes Vandermeer believed in." Her hand froze on her pearls. "I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't you?" I smiled, thinking of the documents I'd discovered in Isabella's old hope chests. "Your grandfather-in-law had some very specific ideas about family and heritage. Would you like me to share them with everyone?" Thomas looked between us, confusion clouding his features. He had always been too willing to accept his mother's version of family history, too eager to please her at any cost, even the cost of his daughter's dignity. "This is hardly the time," Eleanor snapped, but I saw fear flicker in her eyes. "Actually," I said, reaching into my pocket, "I think Thanksgiving is the perfect time to discuss family history. Maria, sweetheart, come here, please." My daughter walked back to me, her head held high despite the tears threatening to spill. I wrapped an arm around her shoulders, feeling her tremble slightly. "Did you know," I addressed the table at large, "that Johannes Vandermeer had a great love? Before he built this estate, before he made his fortune, her name was Lucia Morales." Eleanor's wineglass slammed down. "That's enough. But I'm just getting to the interesting part," I continued, pulling out the first document. "You see, Johannes didn't just love Lucia. He married her. In a little church in Mexico City, 1923. Right before he struck gold and built this house." The dining room fell silent. Even the children stopped fidgeting with their sterling silver spoons. "That's impossible," Regina sputtered. "Grandfather Johannes married grandmother Florence. Everyone knows that." "Florence came later," I agreed. "After Lucia died in childbirth, but not before she gave Johannes a son whose descendants would have a stronger claim to this estate than anyone sitting at this table." Eleanor stood so quickly her chair scraped against the hardwood floor. "These are lies. Thomas, control your wife." But Thomas was staring at Maria, really seeing her for the first time. "Mom," he said slowly, "is that why there are no pictures of grandfather Johannes in the house? Why you burned all his personal papers after Dad died?" "I did no such thing." Eleanor's voice rose an octave. "This woman is trying to destroy our family name." "No, Eleanor," I said, pulling out the birth certificate, its aged paper carefully preserved. "Your husband's father destroyed your family name when he hid his Mexican heritage, when he pretended his own father's first marriage didn't exist, when he married into acceptable society and buried his past." Maria pressed closer to me as I revealed another document, a DNA test. "Would you like to know why Maria looks so much like the portrait of Johannes in the attic? The one you keep hidden under a sheet." The expensive crystal glasses trembled as Eleanor's hands shook. "You had no right to go through family papers." "Actually, I had every right, because Isabella, my mother, the cleaning lady you looked down on for 30 years, was Johannes's granddaughter, and she kept every document, every letter, every proof of her heritage. She just waited for the right time to pass them on." "That's why," Thomas whispered, "that's why Dad always treated Isabella differently, protected her job here, even when Mom wanted to fire her." I nodded. He knew the truth. just like he knew Maria was the only true heir to the Vandermeer legacy. Eleanor lunged for the papers, but I stepped back. Careful, Eleanor. You wouldn't want to make a scene in front of the help, would you? You can't prove any of this, she hissed, but her perfect composure was cracking. Actually, a new voice said from the doorway, she can prove all of it. Howard Matthews, the family's longtime lawyer, stood there holding his own set of documents. Johannes Vandermeer's reel will makes for fascinating reading, Eleanor. Especially the part about his estate reverting to his first family's line, if his descendants ever tried to deny their heritage, you knew? Eleanor whirled on Howard, her face mottled with rage. All these years you knew about this deception. I knew everything, Howard said, stepping into the dining room, his leather briefcase heavy with decades of secrets. Just as your late husband did. Why do you think he insisted Maria's name be added to the trust before he died? The other Vandermeers sat frozen, their Thanksgiving turkey growing cold as the family mythology unraveled before them. Cousin Regina's children stared wide-eyed at Maria, perhaps seeing for the first time how her features mirrored those of the portraits hidden in the attic. Thomas, Eleanor appealed to her son, you can't let them do this. Think of your position in society, your club memberships. My position. Thomas stood slowly, his voice gaining strength. My position as a father who let his daughter be humiliated? Who watched her eat in kitchens and use paper plates because his mother thought she wasn't good enough. Now, Thomas, Regina cut in. Surely you understand the importance of maintaining certain standards. Standards? I laughed, pulling out another document, like the standards Johannes wrote about in his letters to Lucia. Let me read you one, Eleanor. You'll find it interesting. Eleanor sank back into her chair as I began to read. My dearest Lucia, our son grows strong with your beauty and my determination. Let them look down on us now, these so-called elite who think money whitens blood. One day, our descendants will hold this house, and they will hold it with pride in all their heritage. Grandmother, Maria spoke for the first time, her voice clear and steady. Is that why you covered up the roses in the garden? Because great-great-grandmother Lucia planted them. Eleanor flinched as if struck. The Mexican blood roses, brought from Lucia's hometown, had always been a source of her particular hatred. Every spring, she ordered them trimmed nearly to death. Those roses, Howard interjected, are specifically protected in Johannes's will, along with several other features of the estate that honor his first wife's heritage. This is preposterous. Eleanor's voice cracked. We are Vandermeers. We've been pillars of this community for generations. Yes, I agreed, you have, built on the foundation of a love story you tried to bury. Tell me, Eleanor, did it hurt to know your husband kept Johannes's real secret from you? That he chose to protect Maria's inheritance instead of your precious social standing? Thomas moved to stand beside us, his hand resting on Maria's shoulder. The country club will never accept this, he said, but I heard resolution rather than regret in his voice. Oh, but they will, Howard smiled, producing another document. Because as of this morning, the Vandermeer estate and all its holdings belong to Maria, held in trust until she's 25, with her mother as executor. The dining room erupted into chaos. Regina's husband knocked over his wine glass, staining the pristine tablecloth red. Their children began to wail, sensing their parents' distress. But Eleanor just sat there, staring at the place setting in front of her, as if seeing it for the first time. My dearest Lucia, our son grows strong with your beauty and my determination. Let them look down on us now, these so-called elite who think money whitens blood. One day, our descendants will hold this house, and they will hold it with pride in all their heritage. Grandmother, Maria spoke for the first time, her voice clear and steady. Is that why you covered up the roses in the garden? Because great-great-grandmother Lucia planted them. Eleanor flinched as if struck. The Mexican blood roses, brought from Lucia's hometown, had always been a source of her particular hatred. Every spring, she ordered them trimmed nearly to death. Those roses, Howard interjected, are specifically protected in Johannes's will, along with several other features of the estate that honor his first wife's heritage. This is preposterous. Eleanor's voice cracked. We are Vandermeers. We've been pillars of this community for generations. Yes, I agreed, you have, built on the foundation of a love story you tried to bury. Tell me, Eleanor, did it hurt to know your husband kept Johannes's real secret from you? that he chose to protect Maria's inheritance instead of your precious social standing. Thomas moved to stand beside us, his hand resting on Maria's shoulder. The country club will never accept this, he said, but I heard resolution rather than regret in his voice. Oh, but they will, Howard smiled, producing another document. Because as of this morning, the Vandermeer estate and all its holdings belong to Maria, held in trust until she's 25, with her mother as executor. The dining room erupted into chaos. Regina's husband knocked over his wine glass, staining the pristine tablecloth red. Their children began to wail, sensing their parents' distress. But Eleanor just sat there, staring at the place setting in front of her, as if seeing it for the first time. There's more, Howard continued inexorably. Johannes left specific instructions about the estate's management. The main house is to be open for cultural events celebrating Mexican-American heritage. The gardens are to be restored to Lucia's original design, and the portraits, all of them, are to be displayed prominently. No, Eleanor whispered, but there was no fight left in her voice. Yes, I said firmly, starting with the holiday celebrations. Maria, sweetheart, would you like to tell your grandmother about our plans for party? Maria straightened, channeling every ounce of Vandermeer pride Eleanor had tried to deny her. We're hosting a posada, she announced, in the main hall, with real Mexican hot chocolate and tamales made from great-great-grandmother Lucia's recipe. The look of horror on Eleanor's face was almost comical. You can't. Actually, they can, Howard interrupted. In fact, according to the will, they must. Johannes was very specific about maintaining his first wife's cultural traditions. Failure to do so would result in the entire estate being donated to a Mexican-American cultural foundation. Thomas let out a surprised laugh. Dad knew, didn't he? That's why he always insisted on keeping Mom's racism in check, at least in public. Your father was many things, Howard agreed, but he honored his own father's wishes in the end. He made sure Maria would inherit not just the estate, but the truth about her heritage. I watched Eleanor's perfectly coordinated world crumble around her designer shoes. The crystal, the china, the silver. All of it would now serve to celebrate the very heritage she had tried to erase. Well, I said, picking up the fine china plate from my daughter's empty place setting. I believe it's time for dinner. Maria, would you like to sit at the head of the table? After all, it is your house now. 1 year later, the Vandermeer estate glowed with party lights and paper lanterns, the scent of cinnamon and chocolate drifting from the kitchen where Maria helped the new chef prepare traditional Mexican hot chocolate. The posada celebration was in full swing, with local families filling the once austere halls with laughter and music. I stood in front of Johannes and Lucia's newly restored portrait, finally hanging in its rightful place above the main staircase. Their love story, etched in oil and canvas, was clear in the way his hand rested protectively over hers, in the proud tilt of her chin, in the slight smile that seemed to say they knew their truth would prevail. Mom, Maria called, rushing over in her new dress, a beautiful blend of Victorian style and Mexican embroidery. Grandmother Eleanor is here. Eleanor stood in the doorway, smaller somehow without her usual armor of superiority. The past year had changed her, forced her to confront generations of carefully constructed lies. Weekly therapy sessions and cultural sensitivity courses, requirements Howard had found buried in Johannes's will, had slowly chipped away at her prejudices. The roses, she said quietly, touching the fresh blooms decorating the entry. They're Lucia's variety. Yes, I nodded. We found the original seedlings in the greenhouse, hidden behind all those orchids you preferred. They're thriving now. Thomas appeared beside his mother, carrying a carefully wrapped package. Mom brought something for Maria, he said, his voice holding a note of cautious hope. Eleanor stepped forward, holding out the package with trembling hands. I found this in the attic. It belonged to Lucia. Maria carefully unwrapped the gift, revealing a delicate silver hairbrush and mirror set, engraved with Spanish phrases of love and blessing. It's beautiful, she whispered. Johannes gave it to her on their wedding day, Eleanor explained, her voice thick with emotion. Your grandfather, my husband, he showed it to me once, before I made him hide away anything that didn't fit my vision of what a Vandermeer should be. The mariachi band in the garden struck up a new song, the music floating through the open windows. Around us, guests admired the newly unveiled family photographs showing the complete Vandermeer history, including those Eleanor had once banished to the attic. "Would you like to learn how to make champorado?" Maria asked her grandmother suddenly. "Chef Rosa is teaching me Lucia's recipe." Something shifted in Eleanor's face, a softening, a surrender to change. "I would like that very much." As they walked toward the kitchen together, Thomas squeezed my hand. "You could have taken everything from her," he said quietly, "made her pay for all those years of cruelty." "No," I shook my head, watching my daughter teach her grandmother how to properly whisk the chocolate. The best revenge was letting her see what she almost destroyed, this legacy of love that transcended prejudice. Johannes and Lucia knew their truth would come out eventually. They just needed someone brave enough to tell it. Through the window, I could see Cousin Regina's children playing with local kids in the garden, their designer clothes forgotten as they chased each other around Lucia's roses. The estate that had once been a monument to exclusion now buzzed with the energy of inclusion. Besides, I smiled, Maria inherited more than just the Vandermeer name. She got Lucia's capacity for forgiveness, Johannes' strength of character, and Isabella's patient wisdom. She's teaching all of us how to be better. The evening wore on, filled with traditional foods, bilingual carols, and stories of Johannes and Lucia's love shared in both English and Spanish. Eleanor sat with Maria, listening intently as our daughter read from her great-great-grandparents' letters, perhaps finally understanding that true family legacy isn't measured in social status or pristine place settings, but in the courage to love across all boundaries. As the last guest departed, Maria placed a rose from Lucia's garden in her grandmother's hands. "Feliz Navidad, grandmother," she said softly. Eleanor held the flower carefully, its petals as red as the truth that had finally bloomed at the Vandermeer estate. "Feliz Navidad, my nieta," she replied, her pronunciation careful, practiced, and sincere. Sometimes the greatest victories come not from destroying the old order, but from transforming it into something new and beautiful, just as Johannes and Lucia had hoped all along.